So our next speaker who will be speaking on care for environment is Professor Christiana Zenner, whom, as you have heard, has flown in all the way from the US. She's Associate Professor of Theology, Science and Ethics, and affiliated faculty in Environmental Studies at Fordham University, Lincoln Center, New York City. It doesn't end there. Actually, quite long, this bio. I'll keep it. She is a scholar of science and religion. She's telling me to cut it short. What to do? So accomplished, I have to keep going. Focusing especially on the church's social teaching and its ecological turn. She's the author of Just Water, Theology, Ethics and Freshwater, Crises, and she's also coordinator of 2 volumes on bioethics, science and society and sustainability. I think you agree with me. In short, nerd. Okay, her next book, but that's why she's here to share all her wisdom because we don't always get to research Okay, her next book is called Beyond Laudato Si. It'll be published next year, aligned with the 10th anniversary of the encyclical written by Pope Francis. This is your cue. Please join me in welcoming Professor Zenner. Louder a bit louder a bit. Very good. Thank you. We keep it going. She's still there only now. She fly all the way from US. Thank you very much.
That was the warmest and most unexpected welcome I've ever heard. And I do think it is a wonderful use for plastic. Thank you. I didn't come here today expecting that I needed to have my eyebrow game on point. But I am glad that I spent a little time on my makeup. So thank you, Friar Robin, for your remarks earlier, which represents so much of the welcome and the hospitality and the thoughtfulness, the gentleness and the humor that I have already received here in Singapore in my limited time so far. I obviously come from New York City in the United States at present, so I've been there since about 2009. And it has long been a dream, almost for that long, to come to Singapore for many reasons, including because I study water and the ways in which values for fresh water have grown and been attended to by the Catholic Church. It's been very interesting to me to see how Singapore has been working with recycled water and thinking about water in a way that many societies, most societies, all societies around the world are just now learning to catch up with. And then to come under the invitation of the 2024 Caritas Social Mission Conference, when there has been such a long period since your prior one, due of course to COVID, is a real honor. And so I want to express my gratitude. My slides are not as good as Friar Robin's, but I'm a professor, so I can talk as long as we need. I will try to keep it short. I want to express my gratitude to Caritas Singapore for having me here, and especially to Gail Ung and to Lita Rodriguez and to the leadership of Caritas, to the Care for Creation team and the board of directors, and to the folks I have been able to meet already at Agape Village, but most especially to all of you here. It is a special and generous thing to spend time on your Saturday being talked at by people from a stage. And so after this art has concluded, I very much look forward to learning from you and to conversations where you are able to bring the insights that you have felt in your heart and your mind today into the context of your life, your experience, and your insights as wonderful human beings in the world. Thank you for that. We are, of course, going to talk about Laudato Si, one of my favorite documents. And I want to underscore that in talking about Laudato Si, as with talking about many kinds of environmental and social realities, it can be really tiring to hear a list of all the things that are challenges. And it can be anxiety-producing. Those of us who teach in university contexts know about the ecological anxiety or the climate change grief or the sense of loss and lack of control that many students and the younger generation are very understandably feeling. And many of us in somewhat older generations may also feel that too. So I want to invite us in this time today to hold together questions of social and ecological interdependence. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I also want to invite us to hold together a complex kind of hope along with joy. What does hope mean? And how does joy feed that? Even in a situation where there are so many challenges, there is so much need. I don't have answers to those questions, but because I'm a professor, I'm good at posing questions, so that's what I'll do. And I want to lead then with a quote from Pope Francis in Laudato Si that has to do precisely with this question of hope and joy. He says in paragraph 61 of Laudato Si, "We need only to take a frank look at the facts to see that our common home is falling into serious disrepair. Hope," he says, "would have us recognize that there is always a way out, that we can always redirect our steps, that we can always do something to solve our problems." And the question for you going forward, and for our organizations, for our educational efforts, is what are those things that we can do? I will hope to come back to that at the end. If I forget, please remind me. And let's get going. How many people here have read Laudato Si? Okay, a very impressive number, perhaps not surprising, given that this is a self-selected group on a Saturday morning at a social mission conference. But props to you, because what we know about encyclicals, the papal genre of authoritative teaching on matters of social, political, economic, and now environmental realities, what we know about encyclicals is that they are not short. Yes, right, they're long, and they don't always read like your favorite novel. They read something like a philosophical treatise or like an ecclesial letter. And each pope has his own way of speaking in an encyclical. So the late Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI was very, very philosophical, and he quoted Nietzsche, for example. The current Pope Francis tends to be more pastoral, and we will get into some of the folks whom he quotes in new and important ways. But as an overview, we'll start with an overview of Laudato Si, and then we'll delve into some specific notions. It's an encyclical of the Catholic Church, which is the highest written authority, one of the two highest written authorities, the other being documents from the Synod of Bishops. It has 6 chapters that are wide-ranging. There are some really common resounding themes that come through. I put just a couple of them up here. One is this refrain that our common home, and by this he means the earth, as well as social life, so nature and social life, our common home is falling into disrepair. Pope Francis also writes that the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor are interwoven, and he establishes here the deep linkage between ecological and social flourishing, as well as ecological and social degradation. Everything is connected, he says again and again and again. Then there's this idea of integral ecology, and we'll delve into that a little bit later, as well as this appeal to ecological conversion. And I've been asked to focus especially on notions of integral ecology, ecological conversion, dignity, and the common good. And so those terms will come up a lot. I want, though, here to give a shout out once again to Father Robin, not just because of my eyebrows, but also because among the things that, see, this is tricky. Where is the page? Among the things that struck me in his remarks was the invitation to think about transforming to become who we really are. And I'd like you to hold that in your hearts and minds for this conversation as well. What does it mean in the context of Laudato Si, of your work in social mission, of your lives as individuals, to transform to become who we really are? I can't think of a better definition of conversion And we'll come to that later too. So thank you for that, Friar Robin. Okay. Now, I am writing this book. It's called Beyond Laudato Si. It's not because I think I have better things to say than the Pope. Although I did get accused by a climate change denier in the United States of ghostwriting Laudato Si for the Pope. And that was kind of like a really awesome moment because I was like, no, but thank you. So I started writing Laudato Si because I've had the privilege of speaking with many different groups and learning from many different groups and individuals about Laudato Si. And I thought there are just so many things in this encyclical and so many insights that surface from it. And there are some also really significant loose ends. So that's what the book is about. And I sent the proposal off to the press almost a year ago and heard back, and they were very excited. And that was June 2023. And then in August 2023, the Vatican sends out this notice that the Pope is going to drop a new document that is a follow-up to Laudato Si. And I was like, what? That was my job. Just kidding. At first I was like, uh-oh, this is going to make the job harder. But then I thought, actually, this is fantastic because I do very much want to know what the Vatican, what the Pope, what folks at this level are seeing, what has changed in the interim and what has not changed. And so what we got, as many of you know, was the much shorter than an encyclical document, an apostolic exhortation that came out on the feast day of St. Francis of Assisi in October 2023, October 24th, 2023. And it was pithy, it was to the point, it was specific about various nations. United States, we're among the worst in many ways on climate change and denial, but also political recalcitrance. And Pope Francis names that. And Pope Francis names challenges of rampant individualism and consumerism and attachment to techno-economic or technocratic paradigms that only perpetuate the status quo of eco-social degradation without addressing the values and the root causes. It was really exciting to me to read that document. There's a lot that he has to say, and if you haven't read it, I do recommend it. One of the things he says, though, is it's been 8 years since Pope Francis released Laudato Si, and not much has changed. In fact, a lot of things have worsened. Were you not listening? Let me say it again, once more, with feeling. That's Laudate Deum. All right, so I'm going to give a quick overview of ideas in Laudato Si. Again, it's an encyclical. New thing that Pope Francis did, he directed it to every person living on the planet. Not only Catholics, not only bishops, to disseminate vertically among dioceses and priests. He also tweeted it out, which honestly is kind of rad. It's the first encyclical to centralize explicitly the question of ecology and human ecology, what that means. So whereas other popes from Paul VI through John Paul II through Benedict XVI had certainly talked about the environment and about the importance of nature and had noticed that economic development without attention to social goods, without attention to ecological goods, that's not enough. Pope Francis is the first one to say, this needs to be the focus. So chapter 1 says, Dear everyone, our common home is falling into disrepair. And he gives examples of climate change, of water pollution, of social inequality, and a range of other problems that indicate this. In chapter 2, he directs his message specifically to Christians. He engages the language of the Hebrew Bible Old Testament and then also the New Testament to speak about the language of stewardship, which needs to be the role of humans, responsible stewardship. And he actually says, if the church has in any way given the impression or the interpretation that humans should dominate the earth, then that's wrong. then we need to rethink our premises. That's some really amazing, beautiful humility and scriptural interpretation coming from the Pope. Chapter 3 offers critiques of the technocratic paradigm and modern anthropocentrism. The technocratic paradigm is the idea that for problems of environmental or social degradation, an economic fix or a technical solution on their own will get us there. And he says this can be an alluring but erroneous attachment. What we need to do is think about the framework in which we are understanding human life and environmental problems. Because technology, the next great invention, no matter how great, is only as good as the ethical framework within which it is deployed. And so this is one of the times that the Pope begins to bring us back to the question of what is the framework for valuing life on Earth. Chapter 4 is on integral ecology. And this, as I'll say more about in a minute, is really one of the beating hearts of the encyclical. It's a short chapter, but it is a chapter that everyone returns to. And it's a notion that opens up so many possibilities for thinking about human flourishing in the relationships that sustain us. And those relationships are between human beings, which is kind of the classical stuff of ethics. I'm trained as an ethicist, so that's the stuff I love. But also between humans and the environment. As an environmental ethicist, I love that too. And then the theology part, humans in relationship to God. So this God, humans, earth triad that Friar Robin also alluded to. Chapter 5 gives examples of different responsibilities and actions for actors on different levels of scale and at different institutions. And chapter 6 talks about ecological spirituality and conversion to the cries of the earth and the poor. So that's your overview. Don't worry, there's not going to be a test. Integral ecology. Okay, one of the things that got really tricky when I am researching this book is what exactly is integral ecology? Because it's one of these terms, kind of like sustainability, that seems like it should be obvious. And it seems like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I know what that is. That's where we integrate human well-being and ecosystemic well-being. We think about culture. Everything needs to be integrated. And that's true. But how that looks in chapter 4 is quite varied. And in fact, I think the Pope is doing something quite interesting here. In one category, he groups economic, social, and not economic on the second one. That's supposed to be environmental ecology. So in just one subheading, we have economy, which obviously dictates a lot of relations in the world. We have social relations, and then we have environmental ecology or environmental science, which many people think of as the fullness of ecology. But then he goes on to articulate all these other aspects of ecology that are key to integral ecology. One is cultural ecology. One is what he calls the ecology of daily life. And then the last two, very, very important, are common good and justice between the generations. Why is the common good part of integral ecology? Why is justice between the generations part of integral ecology? I think this is fundamentally because this encyclical is not just about ecology, though it's that. It's not just about the ethics of relationships, though it's that. It's about dignity and what it means to live that out in community. And to live our imago Dei, our created human dignity out in community means looking toward the common good, the kind of Ubuntu notion that Friar Robin noted. It means looking for how in society of many differences and diversities, there can also be ways of seeking everyone's flourishing. It means looking toward the horizontal, expanded sense of global justice as well as local justice, that's the common good, and to solidarity with the suffering. But it also means looking intergenerationally to justice between generations. What do we owe to the future? How can we support those who will come after us? Because it is our actions that help to guarantee the dignity or to enshrine forms of suffering that are happening in the world today. Okay. And then chapter 6, as I mentioned, is another option I wanted to focus on. This is ecological education and spirituality, and especially ecological conversion, this transformation idea. The Pope writes in paragraph 202 of Laudato Si, many things have to change, but as we human beings, above all, who need to change. We lack an awareness of our common origin, of our mutual belonging, and of a future to be shared with everyone. So there's a lot of resonance in the common good and justice between generations, and then what he's writing about in this idea of ecological conversion. And what is conversion but a turning, a transformation? So if ecology refers to the oikos, to our common home, to the series of relationships that sustain us, conversion, when it's attached as a noun to ecology, refers to that action that theologians since ancient times have called metanoia, which is a turning or a return home, a transformation, a becoming who we truly are. It's taken me a long time to think about these notions because as much as I'm an ethicist, I'm not as much of a theologian. So I tend to step back and let the other folks talk about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But finally, I realized that what I love about this language of ecological conversion is that it's about the motion. It's about the motion of turning and transforming and being transformed, and how that doesn't happen just once. It happens over and over and over again. And the request then is to listen to that turning, to be accosted by the world, and to see what it is we can do and who it is we can engage with and where we can offer our gifts and how this reflects beauty and goodness and love and justice. And there is no end to this process. It doesn't mean that one ever arrives, but it means the task of being human in this complex world. And so that is what I'd offer, transformation to become what we truly are. It's ongoing. It never stops. What does this look like then on practical levels? Because at this point, you're probably like, good with the concepts. Let's take it down a few notches. I feel that way frequently when I'm reading for work. And so let me take us, we're still at a pretty high level, 40,000 feet in the air, airplane kind of view. But let's go to Pope level. This is, of course, Pope Francis. And under his papacy, as you probably know, he established the dicastery for promoting integral human development. This is a screen capture from one of the web pages of that dicastery. It's a screen capture just from a couple days ago. And the reason that I pointed out is that there are, as you also probably know, frequent announcements about upcoming events. For example, the theme of the message for the World Day of the Prayer for the Care of Creation, which is September 1st, has been announced. And the theme is Hope and Act with Creation. Alongside thematic prayer, messaging, and theological statements, the dicastery for promoting integral human development is newly starting some really, really interesting frameworks, but also projects to encourage forms of ecological conversion and encourage the integration of social and environmental realities. So I want to talk a little bit about those. I actually had the privilege of being in Italy before this. My daughter, who's 16, calls this my tour around the world, which is kind of amazing. It's going to take me forever to get home. But I began with a trip to Italy that was partly for research and partly to celebrate with some friends. And in St. Peter's Square in the Vatican, this is a picture of part of St. Peter's Square, it's the colonnade, there is an art installation that is going from May 7th to 27th, I believe, and it's called Changes. What it is a series of photographs from different photographers around the world, from different cultures, different geographies, capturing different things. And each photograph represents a type of ecological or social change and is paired with a line from Laudato Si or Laudate Deum. So you can go and online, I'm happy to send links that Caritas can send out, but if you just Google Changes Vatican Dicastery Integral Human Development, you'll find it. And this is a whole series of visual as well as textual meditations that might be really interesting to think with. You may know if you've been to Rome recently, or if you follow these kinds of things, that Pope Francis is increasingly using St. Peter's Square as a site for contemporary art that reflects on social and environmental issues. So there's also a statue right now about migration and the ways in which the human face of migration presents itself in the world. Again, more about the photo exhibition Changes. I won't ask you to read all of this because that's a lot, but it's a really, really lovely exhibit that I was very privileged to see. And you'll see in the second paragraph from bottom, the 24 photographs come from Borneo, Bangladesh, Togo, Ethiopia, the Amazon, Florida, Greece, Italy, Iceland, Australia, and Turkey, and present a contrast between the beauty and wonder of creation and the destruction of climate change, which affects both our environments and populations around the world. Another model coming out of the Vatican is what is being called an integral ecology living and learning center. And this is like hot off the press, folks. I had no idea about this until Monday. So being a science and theology nerd, I was very excited to get a private tour of the Vatican Observatory on Monday. And Father Gabriele Gionti, who is the second in command there, gave several colleagues and I a lovely, lovely tour. And as we were leaving, right, we've been looking at all these historical telescopes, looking at the signatures of these great physicists. It's so cool. It's so exciting. And we're leaving. And he said, oh, by the way, these Vatican gardens at Castel Gandolfo, which is outside of Rome, these Vatican gardens, the Pope has set aside to become an integral ecology living and learning center. So this picture of some cypress trees and some pine trees and the orange fencing is in fact a picture of the ground that is being prepared for several new buildings to go up in these ancient gardens. I mean, these gardens have been around since the time of the Emperor Domitian. And what Pope Francis is building there is a living and learning community where people will come and do ecological agriculture. They will probably think about economics and ecological economics and relationships of care. And they will try to pilot a model of what communities of integral ecology can look like. I have to say that having been in Singapore now for a few days, I think you all, and Caritas especially, are incredibly well poised to think about your own organizations as embodying something like this. And I think that, for example, the Agape Hub does that beautifully. We can talk more about that. But this is a highly ambitious project. I don't even know yet all the parameters. I've got several emails out to try to figure out what's going on, but it's very exciting. Stay tuned. Keep looking for that. So then I also know that staying at 40,000 feet doesn't always work. And so the question is, well, what does this mean for us, right? Like, if we're thinking about dignity, if we're thinking about the common good, if we're thinking about how care for everything from early life to end of life aligns with ecological action and care for the marginalized and migration and everything else, what can this look like in Singapore? Well, I'm not the expert on this. You absolutely are. So I pitched this to you for subsequent conversations. But here are some things that came up for me. One, of course, was the amazing Laudato Si Mass that happened yesterday. How many people were at that Mass? Okay, I've never been to a Mass like that. It was stupendous. And I have definitely never heard a cardinal or any priest in the United States, for that matter, equate individualized overconsumption with the vice of concupiscence. I still can never say that. That's amazing. That is amazing. And for the cardinal to be able to say, you know what else is a problem here? Food waste. You know what is a problem here? Plastic waste. I mean, I was like, not only is everyone in Singapore apparently a really great public speaker. I mean, yeah. But also, those are great suggestions. And he's totally right. You know, it's true in the US. I presume it's true here. So I think that those are some really great ways to continue moving forward. And the more that we can hear church leaders, Friar Robin, the Cardinal, many others reflect. I used up all the battery. Okay, speeding through. There are so many opportunities in those kinds of contexts for prayer, reflection, and action. And here I'm also riffing a little bit on the Care for Creation, the C4C framework that committee has developed, which is body, mind, and heart. So you'll see in these a range of connections to body, mind, and heart. You all have done amazing work on that committee. So, okay. Opportunities for prayer, reflection, and action. You're the experts. Great. You obviously planned this amazing day. I totally defer to you on what that looks like. I also learned that the Pope is coming to Singapore in September, which is amazing. I mean, like, truly amazing. Apparently, Gail, can I tell this story? Where's Gail? Can I tell this story about the hotel? Okay. So Gail, bless her, who has taken amazing care of me since the beginning of the invitation, said to me, you know, Christiana, when I called the hotel to make the reservation because of a speaker coming in for a Catholic social mission conference, the Pope's visit to Singapore had just been announced. And so the poor manager at the hotel had, I think, a moment of hope that perhaps the room was being reserved for the Pope. Alas, he got a laywoman from the United States. But hey, we can't all wear the top-notch role. So I'm guessing he might not stay at that hotel. I'm guessing there's a whole papal office that deals with this. But my point here is, because with the Pope's visit in 2024, followed by the Jubilee year in 2025, there are incredible opportunities liturgically, pastorally, in terms of action, in terms of mission reflection, that can just be mobilized, and I think that's really exciting. Obviously, I'm an educator, and we are here at the Catholic Junior College, so I am personally fond of recommending that the integration of environmental ecology, dignity, and the common good be explored in Catholic schools. And I mean that in terms of grade schools with the littler ones, and also in terms of universities. And I know that Dr. Michelle Mo, who spoke so beautifully on the video yesterday that will be released with the Laudato Si programming, it will be fantastic in working on that. There are, of course, lots of other ways this could look in Singapore. Those models I talked about from the Vatican, whether art exhibits that bring together all sorts of tourists, right? St. Peter's Square is not only for Catholics. There are so many people of different faiths and none who come there. So exhibits on integral ecology and ecological conversion, interfaith engagements. And then also possibly thinking about ways that there could be a Singapore equivalent of an integral ecology living and learning center. Again, I think the Agape Hub is a great example of this already. Maybe there are more. And then I wanted to suggest that the Archdiocese and the Care for Creation C4C committee and initiatives could partner in all sorts of ways. Certainly on matters of energy and waste and water, as they've already articulated in their brilliant plan. Looking then also perhaps at the intersections of climate change and water, which I understand the president of Singapore has recently articulated as a very central theme that should be addressed. And I think what Catholic social teaching, what your organizations can bring to that in particular, is that the relationship between climate change and water is not just an abstract one. It's not just a physical relationship of water vapor that heats up in the atmosphere and deserts that get drier and tropical areas that get wetter. Instead, the relationship between climate change and water is one that relates to human dignity, to human rights, to social goods, and that, in the words of Pope Francis, all of this is connected. And hence, finally, an integration with the social projects that all of you are working on so beautifully here. I'm really excited that I think I'm actually sticking to time. I got the 5-minute sign like 2.5 minutes ago, and we're going to do it. Okay, so concluding words from Pope Francis in Laudato Si. A reminder that every ecological approach needs to incorporate a social perspective, which takes into account the fundamental rights of the poor and underprivileged. You all know this, you are in this room, but I want to give that quote to you to carry forward in your work. Every ecological approach needs to incorporate a social perspective. And then finally, in union with all creatures, we journey through this land seeking God. For if the world has a beginning, and if it has been created, we must inquire who gave it this beginning and who was its creator. Let us sing as we go. May our struggles and our concern for this planet never take away the joy of our hope. I promised at the beginning to return to the question of where your own transformation may be located. Because the work of social mission is rewarding, but it can be hard. The work of ecological education is rewarding, but it can be hard. And the problems just keep being there and keep multiplying, even as we address others. So I want to leave you with a concept from a United States-based marine biologist. Her name is Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She's a total rock star, and she has a new book coming out in June. And she writes about something that she calls the climate Venn diagram. It's also a Venn diagram that the late Father Michael Himes, S.J., a priest at Boston College in the United States, used to refer to as a Venn diagram of discernment, of moral discernment. So it goes like this. I'm sorry that I forgot to put a picture up of it. That would have been very useful. Oh, well. Okay, so the top circle is what the world needs, right? There's a lot of things. A lot of things. We don't need to go into the list, but the world needs a lot of things. The next circle is what your skills are and what you are uniquely positioned to see. So this might be you spent a career in finance, you spent a career in law, you have those skills that you can bring to the organizations. It might be that and here I'm looking for James who loves insects, that you are an expert on insects and you bring those as your offering to the Laudato Si Mass and teach, there you are, hello James, and teach students about that. It might be that you're a lawyer and you want to think about water rights. All of those things. What do you bring to the world? What are you uniquely positioned to see and offer?
And then the third circle, and this is crucial. This third one is so, so crucial. What brings you joy or delight? And that matters. It really matters. It's why I have this quote from Pope Francis up at the end. It can be very, very tempting to fall into the exhaustion of the work. But it is essential for yourself, for your transformation, for your relationship to the world and God and other people, to retain the delight and the joy. So find what is at the intersection of your joy, your delight, your skills, and what you might offer, and then what the world needs. And that is where you will find the way going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Zenner. Thank you.